Okay, we're going to get going here. And so, welcome. Keith, are we on? Got a thumbs up from Keith Holman there. It is so good to be here, everybody. My name is Mike Kinman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the rector, the senior pastor here at All Saints Church. And one of my goals is to make this introduction as brief as possible so we can just get to having some fun together. So welcome to the forum. We actually do this every Sunday at 9 o'clock, and so please keep looking at our website, allsaints-pas.org, to see all the great stuff that we have going on here. We had a 7:30. This is our Healing Sunday here at All Saints Church. We do these periodically. I think we're probably going to do them more often because it just feels like we are more and more and more in need of healing. And that's going to be some of the conversation that we're going to have today about what does it mean for us to be healing community. But there is no one better I can think of to have this conversation with than Nadia. So I'm gonna read the brief bio from, you wrote it, so it better be okay. So, which is, the first thing is like the quote that you all know this from the website, which is, "God, please help me not be an asshole," is about as common a prayer as I pray in my life. And so, Nadia Bolz-Weber is an ordained Lutheran pastor, founder of House of All Sinners and Saints in Denver, the creator and host of the Confessional, and the author of 3 New York Times bestselling memoirs. She writes and speaks about personal failings, recovery, grace, faith, and really whatever the hell else she wants to. She always sits in the corner with the other weirdos, and you can subscribe to her newsletter or her writings, The Corners, to receive her writing in your inbox weekly. And one of the things I love about The Corners is it has a voluntary paywall, which is wonderful. It's like, if you want to pay for it, great. If not, it's free. And that's just such a really wonderful model. So first of all, can we welcome Nadia Bolz-Weber? And first thing I want you to share, can you share why you came to town? Because I love what it is, but I also love the choice that you're making to care for yourself in this way.
I'm just part of...
You got to flip that on. That should work.
Okay, so I just have I'm part of a subculture. I have the hobby. It's called sacred harp singing, and it's very nerdy. It's like colonial era music that people gather to sing together all day long for 2 days straight. It's 5 hours a day of singing, and we face each other in what's called a hollow square, kind of like this, but there would be rows here, all facing the center, and it's a cappella. It's 4-part harmony, and you can't beat the dopamine hit of singing with people. And the things I love about sacred harp singing, and then we don't have to discuss it anymore, is it's egalitarian, so everyone who comes has a chance to call the next song and then stand in the middle and lead it. There are no auditions to be part of a sacred harp singing. There's never a performance of sacred harp singing. Partly there's no call for it because the music's really weird. The saying is, I travel 1,000 miles to sing this music, but I wouldn't cross the street to just listen to it. So it's just participatory. And people sing with their natural voices. There's no dynamics in the music, so you just sing full-throated the whole time. And if you have a weird voice, great, all the better. And I was raised in a tradition that sang a cappella 4-part harmony, and I went to church 3 times a week, so for the first 16 years of my life. So I think singing the alto line to hymns was my first language. I could probably do that before I could speak English. So it's a way to get to be a part of that again. And most of the lyrics have to do with dying. So it's I like that too. There's a lot of like, hey, remember, this is where everyone's going to end up laying eventually, So I find that really healthy.
Well, and that feels like I hear you talk about that, and for me it's like, wow, that sounds like amazing church. Mm-hmm. Because you get together, there's no auditions, you throw all yourself into it, it's not meant for someone else's consumption, and you deal with, like, it's all about dying. You deal with kind of the real stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I wish there were auditions for church. I feel like it would, it would be better. Yeah.
Yeah, but we really get, what? So like, let's play that one through to the end, and it's like, who's holding the auditions and what? Because in a lot of churches, they're kind of our auditions, and it doesn't turn out well.
That's true, yeah.
So right now we like to, I think, kind of say that we're in a post-pandemic place, and it's really not. And part of what we're looking at, not just this Sunday, but this year, especially as we head into what we thought like 2020 was sort of like World War I was the war to end all wars, and 2020 was the election to end all elections, and it's like, oh, now it's season 2, and we're holding so much, and my experience is that we tend to live in denial of what we're holding, and we tend to not only beat other people up about it, but we beat ourselves up about it. And this is like the broadest question possible, but I'd love you to talk about your experience of kind of living through the pandemic, and what are you seeing right now as we head into 2024?
I mean, we all have our own sort of pandemic stories, and mine was that in 2019 I was on 90 airplanes in 7 countries, and then in 2020 I was in my apartment, and it was such an abrupt change that I was forced to. What happened for me was that I didn't realize that my life had sped up that much, and I didn't realize that I had become accustomed to being treated special. And there are no upgrades in my apartment. There's no VIP section. Nobody was sending a car for me. And I had to deal with what it felt like for my ego to go on a starvation diet, And when I realized that, oh gosh, this discomfort I'm feeling is because I became accustomed to something that now feels gross to admit to, I realized I couldn't speed back up to that, And I feel like now in my life, I can do up to one thing a day. that's And my life's gotten really much smaller and much happier. I feel like when we were allowed out of our houses again, it felt like I had newborn skin. I felt everything. Everything just felt shaky and fragile. And I don't know that that's gone away for me. And so what I had to commit to was not defaulting to just impersonating a pre-pandemic version of myself, and to really commit to that, and to also allow for the fact that nobody else in my family, I can't assume they're going to be the pre-pandemic version of themselves. I was so excited to get back to being around them, and then it felt awkward to be around people I was excited to be around again. And so I think just having a lot of, it's my first pandemic, and
really and also the worst pandemic of our lifetime so far.
This is the worst one. And it's gonna, there's no going back. And I think the whole time we were kind of fantasizing, when can we go back? When can we go back? But the thing that has shifted, at least for me and for people in our lives, our capacity is different. My capacity to load my life up has shifted. My capacity to be around institutions or people that I feel like are not being honest is shifted. So my ability to kind of be around things that I feel like don't matter that much, gone, right? So, yeah, I think that's what.
Well, and then one of the things that happened in the face of that is it's been called the Great Resignation. And it's people basically, in some ways, going through what you're describing, which is oh, I can't do this anymore. And it feels to me like we have these polar things pulling us. We have this sort of societal expectation that is driven by capitalism and other things of like, no, we have to get back to producing at this level. But then we also have this profound experience that, what you're saying resonates with me of like, I don't want to associate with these things anymore. And yet, I'm also feeling compelled to. So it feels like we're being, at a moment where our capacity is down, we're being stretched even more. Have you seen that? And where are you experiencing that, or are you experiencing something different?
Well, I feel like my whole life I was driven, entrepreneurial. I was always creating stuff. I always had a big project. I'm going to start a church. I'm going to start a project. I'm going to start a conference. I was always creating, and it honestly feels like most of my ambition left with my estrogen. I think it's I think it's gone. So I think that's it. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe that's it, but every time I think about it, doing a big project, I think, oh my God, it would just really cut into the time I cook, So, but again, my ego struggles because I have to get my friends new books in the mail about once or twice a week. Right. So other people are out there on the grind still. And I have to go, if I wanted to do it, I could do it. And so I think just allowing for a gentler, smaller, calmer life has been a real act of mercy toward myself. And it's not everybody, other people can get out there and really grind and create and be productive and stuff. And I have found I am unable since the pandemic to do it. Yeah.
So one of the things that happens with our brains is, and it's actually one of the things I noticed during the pandemic, we started dreaming about, oh, this can be a break and we can come back different and do all these other things. And yet the brain chemistry is, the more stress we're under, it actually impedes our capacity for creative thought. And so, I wonder, as you have been intentional about, oh, I'm going to take a walk in the park and cook instead of being tied to production, what is your creative process like? What is, are things bubbling up in that space for you? And if so, what?
Not really.
Okay,
no.
well, good. Next question. That's good.
I mean, I could lie, but I don't,
Yeah.
I have a more contemplative life now. Not in the fact that I don't do something super sexy like, meditate for 20 minutes in the morning
right.
and stuff. But what I mean is that I get to sort of let the thoughts breathe, and I get to sort of read something and then let it sink in. And when I have something to write, I sit down and write on the corners. Like several people here subscribe, and I don't have a posting schedule. Right. I'm not a content creator, so it's not like every Monday you'll get this from me. Right. Maybe, but but I let it be sort of an organic process, and it's a luxury. But I'm really grateful for it.
Talk about your experience in the women's prison as one of your communities that you're working with. And how did you get drawn to that, and what has that been like for you?
So I have my letter of call from my bishop is as a public theologian, but I'm officially attached to 3 communities in Denver where I preach regularly. So one is the Episcopal Cathedral, and one is Montview Presbyterian, and the other is New Beginnings, which is inside the women's prison. So I'm inside the Denver women's prison twice a week, and it's its own congregation. So there's a vestry of incarcerated women who I meet with every week, me and the other pastor, Pastor Sam. And I have to have membership in an ELCA, that's my denomination. I have to have official membership in an ELCA denomination for my letter of call. So I'm the only free person who's a member of New Beginnings Lutheran Church inside the women's prison. I think the reason I'm drawn to it is nobody inside is pretending life's better than it is. And there's something really beautiful about getting to be present to joy inside a place where it's not supposed to exist. And it does feel like I'm not really from a tradition that talks about spiritual warfare. So if you said, do you believe in spiritual warfare? I'd be like, no, but I for sure have experienced it. And so it does feel like the powers and principalities are dominant inside the prison system. And so to bring the Eucharist inside a closed unit, it feels subversive and beautiful. And a few months back at worship, which is inside a gym with this aggressively loud HVAC system, and there's a dog training program in the prison, so there may or may not be dogs, and then somebody having a seizure in the back, and like there's somebody, the cops are dealing with this. I mean, it's chaos. And I forgot to ask one of the women on the council to help serve communion, and so I just look at the woman who's I see first, and I'm ready, and I go, oh, could you serve communion with me? And she just looked, and her whole face lit up like from the inside. And she smiled, and she had these just brown nubs for teeth. Like the meth had just taken all of her teeth. They were just brown. And she comes up, and she was like, me? And I go, yeah. And she stands next to me, and I give her the chalice, and I look, and she has this prison tattoo on her face. It just says savage. And I just thought, oh yeah, there's nothing I would rather be doing than serving Eucharist with this person beside me. It all made sense. Somehow the gospel just makes more sense there,
Well, and what you describe, and it's been my experience in the jails here, is there's just an honesty to it. And that, like, we're all fucked up. We're all, like, have these issues. But when you get into a place like that, there's this opportunity that sometimes people take, and it doesn't always happen in jail, but people take to really say, yeah, here's when I walk the rows at Men's Central, not everyone wants to talk, but the people who do. And, I've had people say, like, how do you know they're not just spinning a story to you and lying to you? And I'm like, well, what does it matter? It's like they're getting attention, they're getting love, and I'm getting connection too. And so, you and I were talking last night, and you related a story, and this is where my brain, I wish I could blame it on COVID, but I've always been this way. My brain just sort of like doesn't remember names and things like that. But you were talking about a conversation that a friend of yours was overhearing on a plane of someone who had basically checked all life's boxes and won.
Yeah, that was Arthur Brooks. This is not a friend of mine.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, someone you heard of. Okay, but about sort of, can you just sort of tell that story and about sort of where they came to?
Yeah, it was Arthur Brooks wrote a book called From Strength to Strength. I don't know if anybody's read it, but he had gotten on a plane, and there was a man, and he doesn't name the person, but he goes, if I did, you would know who it was. Just one of the most successful men in business in America. And he overheard him talking to his wife about feeling like he doesn't feel like that he's done anything significant, and that he hasn't been able to accomplish anything in his life, and there's nothing, he doesn't have a legacy, and he's the guy who you would be like, he's done that more than anyone else. And I guess his book is about how people who studying happiness studies or whatever at Harvard, studying people who retire, who are content and feel like they're leading a good life, that the people least likely to feel that way are the people who are the most successful in work. And so when work is the only place that you get your self-regard, if your sense of meaning and your value of yourself is located solely in your career, and for successful people, it's very easy. Everything colludes to get you to be like solely focused on that. That's the most important thing, and everyone's relying on you and all that. When you're not working anymore, where is the meaning and the self-regard coming from, So he talks about, the people who do the best are ones who can shift into a life of service. Like their self-regard and meaning can be shifted into being of service to others, which we learn in Alcoholics Anonymous. Right. It's a huge part of the program, and it's very AA is so countercultural in so many ways. Richard Rohr describes the 12 steps as America's single yet very important contribution to human spirituality. Right. And And, you know, I think we have a real pandemic of narcissism in our society right now. And it's pawned off as virtue. If you can say it's about wellness, or if you can say it's about taking care of yourself or setting boundaries. There's all this language that sounds like it's really taking care of yourself, when really it's kind of narcissism pawned off as a virtue. And there's lots of money to be made from that as well. And so we had a little conversation before we started here about how so much of the work that we can be doing if we want to be free has to do with dealing with our own stuff, the way we've hurt other people, the harm we might have done, the dishonesty that we've lived with in our lives, the way that we can be a little self-centered. And self-centered can look like, hey, the whole world needs me to take care of them and not myself. That's also ego. Or it can look like the whole world is about serving my own needs. So really, all the great spiritual teachers talk about, you know, sort of decenter the ego. Like, that's a huge aspect of it. Man, we live in a culture that just centers it from every turn and calls it something else. And I don't see people, you know, leading lives of flourishing by focusing exclusively on themselves. Ever. And yet it's so prevalent, you know, so many messages, you got to put yourself first all the time. You know, the whole oxygen mask metaphor needs to go. Because, and what I'm saying is that originally that metaphor was about especially women who were working 2 jobs and like actually had to function on such a level that they were not paying attention to their physical health, right? And so then so really it's women, especially women who were on some level living at 30,000 feet, right? And then it's adopted by women at sea level.
Right.
I mean, unless you're a single mom working too, you know what I'm saying? I doubt like lack of self-care is really your problem, lady, you know?
That's right.
So, anyway.
Well, and I mean, I think about, like you said, if we really want to get free, and I think about movements for liberation that we have, and what I see, and, you know, I always remember Dr. King said, you know, a riot is the language of the unheard, and so we have people who, you know, they have voices, but they have not been heard, and they have not been recognized, and so there is a need to do, you know, legitimate self-care. Again, if you're at 35,000 feet, not if you're at sea level, there is a need to have your voice heard. And if you stop there, then it does turn into a very sort of narcissistic identity politics that puts us in opposition to each other instead of having a servant's heart to each other. And it feels like that's also sort of an outgrowth of this culture. And what, do you see that? And, you know, where do you see us sort of headed nationally? Because, you know, that narcissism isn't just in individuals, it's in churches, it's in nations. Like, what, you know, are you seeing this, and sort of where are you seeing this?
Okay, this is ironic, but I mainly see things in myself.
Right.
Right? I mean, talk about narcissism.
Yeah.
But meaning, most of the things I write about, I'm writing about because I see it in my own heart, you know?
Yeah.
And struggle with it and want to tell the truth about it and then look for some kind of hope. It's never like I'm going to see the problem in this other group of people and build a name for myself by expressing outrage about that. You know, that's covered. There's a lot of that. So I think that one of the gifts of getting older for me is that it's on one level, one humiliation after the other, but on the other level, it is all the vain things that charm me most. So many things I used to think mattered, things I used to get upset about, things that I used to focus on to the detriment of my own flourishing, I do not care anymore.
Yep.
And yeah, so somebody asked me, it was like maybe in 2021, what are you doing to take care of yourself right now? My answer was mostly just letting myself buy the bigger size of jeans. That's my self-care. That's me taking care of it. Just buy the bigger size of jeans. It doesn't matter, you know. So I think the gift, if we can allow for it, is to go through this humility of going, oh yeah, I used to really care about stuff, these things, and I just don't anymore. And like, that's freedom. And I'm in it for the freedom. I'm tired of being bound by my selfish desires, or bound by my ego, or bound by what some Instagram influencer tells me I should be saying, you know, or whatever should be doing. I'm tired, you know.
Yeah. So when we were talking last night, you gave a framework that apparently is out there a lot, but I hadn't heard, which is low versus high anthropology. And it really, like, so much of what you're saying, can you talk about that? And like, I think we agreed that we're meeting in that place of low anthropology.
Yeah, so there's the most theologically Lutheran people I know are Episcopalians who are part of a group called Mockingbird, and Dave Zoll wrote a book called Low Anthropology, which is genius. And the term has to do with what's your basic framework for what humans are capable of? Is it mostly optimistic, or is it mostly whatever the opposite of optimistic is? And what happens in our culture, there's a lot of high anthropology. So what that means is that there are a lot of messages that you can be anything you want. You can do anything you want. If you can think it, you can achieve it. Optimization. There's no end to how much you can, how fit you can be, how educated you can be, how much money you can make. You know, it's these incredible vistas are in front of you, and it's all for your taking, right? That's a high anthropology. Any kind of idealism is a high anthropology. Any kind of utopianism, very high anthropology. Almost every single cult I've ever learned anything about had some kind of high anthropology to it. A low anthropology is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's going, so somebody hurt you. If you look back far enough, you'll probably find at some point in the past, you made a decision based on self that put you in a position to feel that harmed by the other person, right? It's like going, human beings actually have limits to what we can know, to how right we can be. We have limits to how fit we can be. We have limits to how continually honest we can be. You know, we're just limited, and there are ways that even just cognitive bias colludes to in this project of the fact that we're often wrong, and we think we're right, and we'll fight to prove we're right, but maybe we aren't. You know, so. The example in his book is 2 commencement speeches. One was Bill Gates, who was basically like, I don't know, at Harvard or some shit. And he goes, don't let limits of imagination keep you down. If there's no limit to what you can create, there's no limit to what you can be in the world. The entire world is out there and waiting for you to believe in yourself enough to step into this promised future. Now, on the surface, that feels super hopeful. That feels really good to be told that. That feels like inspiring until you get out there. And maybe you struggle a little with depression, or you have anxiety that you didn't realize, or your dad dies and you can't show up to work anymore, or whatever. Like, until you get out there and you go, oh, I haven't achieved all these things Bill Gates told me was possible. What's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me, because obviously, according to what I see on Instagram, other people are doing it, you know? So this is what a high anthropology leaves us with, is despair or pride, but usually despair. But a low anthropology is my friend Annie Lamont's commencement address, where she was like, look, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, okay? People are going to disappoint you. There are a million ways in which you're going to be disappointed in yourself, and life is really hard, and there's just no escaping it. But don't let the fact that things hurt, and you're going to fail, and you're going to disappoint people, and other people are going to disappoint you, please don't let that keep you from experiencing how unbelievably beautiful the world is, and how much love there is that we can access despite all of that. That's a low anthropology. Now, on the surface, seems almost a little depressing, like not quite as inspirational, doesn't really play on Instagram, but at the same time, what it allows for is very important. Having a sort of low expectations for ourselves and other people is the best way to prepare ourselves to receive mercy, to have compassion for other people, to have compassion for ourselves. When every time you hold someone to a standard, I'm so disappointed in them, there's no room for compassion. So I think maybe this is one of the reasons I like doing stuff in the prisons, is because I understand that I am an unconvicted felon. I understand that. So it is just luck that I'm not in prison with the women, many of whom are there because of vehicular homicide, right? So what? I didn't make better decisions than they did. It doesn't come down to that. So anyway, I think that having low expectations is a very luscious place to be, because you get to be surprised, you get to offer grace and compassion to yourself and other people. You get to celebrate little things. So to me, it's the key.
We're going to go, and we've got a few minutes, just sort of questions, observations, whatever, and then Keith's going to have to go at 9:45 to get ready for church. We can stay in here a little bit, but then you're going to have to go sing. So just real quick, and we'll just sort of try to keep it brief so we can get through as many as possible. Are there? Okay, we got over here. Oh, okay, here, Amy.
Hi, everybody. I love you.
I love you. Hi.
Hi, everybody. So many things. But what struck me is folding Mirabai Starr into this and embodied spirituality, because I think a lot of what we talk about is spirituality's over there, perfection's over there, and Mirabai and Annie and you talk about like just being here right now in the sweetness of the sensual world, which I would say is part of the re-inclusion of the divine feminine. But anyway, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's enough in this room. There's enough here in this moment for us to flourish together. There's not something better out there than this. And also, I've been trying to, one way I've found of having more compassion for myself and other people is to try and think anthropologically in another sense, in the fact that living like this is super new for us as humans. Like, capitalism, very new for humans. Not living with extended family, that's a recent thing. That human beings have lived in a very certain way for most of our existence, and then there's this time where we have the big buildings and we drive around in the cars and we're alienated from other people and bank accounts and all of that. So that's super new, so I try to remember that. So much of the dis-ease, both physical disease, but also the dis-ease we have in our spirits, is truly not because something's wrong with us. It's because we really probably aren't equipped to live like this. So a baby born today is biologically identical to a baby born in the Ice Age. And so the hardware's the same, and the software, the updates we can't handle, right? It's too much. And so all of the stimulus, all the expectations, the fact that now we know about every form of human suffering that happens to every human being every minute of the day across the entire planet, I don't know that our psyches were developed to hold that. And so, to me, I have some compassion to go, of course we feel anxious. It's because this whole thing is not the way humans were probably wired to live. And so to kind of realize that lets me relax a little bit and also have compassion, and then go, well, how were we? Humans usually were outside constantly. There was no inside for a very long time. So outside a lot, moving our bodies all day, and that we still have this thing where we're like, is that a predator? Is that a woolly mammoth? We have to have this awareness all the time of, is that bright thing over there berries, and are they poisonous, or are they dinner, right? So there's this awareness all the time of what's a threat and how do we survive? What's a threat and how do we survive? And what happens is now we have these lives of unbelievable comfort and convenience, like never before. And then our brains create a byproduct because they still want to do this, and it's called neuroses. So our brains still want to be like, is there a threat? Can I survive? Is there a threat? Can I survive? And now it's like, why didn't my friends like my Instagram picture? So we end up seeing things as threat and issues of survival that are not even close, but our nervous systems are experiencing them like this. And so even just thinking of it like that lets me pop out of it and go, oh no, nothing's wrong with you. It's just that this is what happens because of the way we're living. And to kind of calm down a little bit and go, maybe I need a new med, maybe not. Maybe I just need to have compassion for myself and others.
So over here, John.
Thank you very much. This has been delightful. Your low point reminded me of something, and I'm afraid I can't give reference to it, and I'm probably going to paraphrase it badly, but I heard it once, and I fought it, and then when I finally got it, I was at peace. And it goes like this: everything you did today was all that you could do today, because if you could do more today, you would have done more today. So all that you did today is all that you could do today. And I fought that initially, but boy, when it went in, it was such a relief. And I'm hearing that from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because so many messages are just try harder. Just try harder. Just work out harder. Just try harder at your job. Just try harder at I'm like, I've tried trying harder. It doesn't make me free. It makes me tired.
Hi, I'm actually a Catholic priest, but I feel a certain simpatico with you in that my main job is not working in a church, but it's producing documentaries. And so I've been in LA for 7.5 years, and I'm so glad I'm here in my 40s and 50s, where like if I was in my 20s, I'd be trying to make it and stuff. What's your experience of, I'm gonna mess up the language on this, but like being part of a community and then being like a floater where you travel and you send out media, whether it's your writings or your books, and just how do you interpret that for your own ministry? And so thank you.
It just feels like I'm a person for a living. That's what it feels like. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's very natural. Nothing feels forced or like work or obligation. I get to be a person for a living, which is beautiful sometimes.
I think this might maybe be for the whole group, but I wanted to like add to our conversation about folks often blaming others for, that narcissism of blaming others for maybe their life circumstances. And it's this quote by Richard Rohr where he says, loosely I'm quoting him, he who points the finger or blames others hasn't started the work. He who blames himself has started the work, but he who blames no one is finished with the work. And I don't think that we are ever finished with the work until we die. I think that's a true finishing, but we can experience moments in our lives of having no blame for ourselves or anybody else. So I think that, I don't know, it kind of went with our conversation about that, and I wanted to share that with you all. So.
I love that. That's beautiful. Good old Richard. He's always laying down the goods. He's tapped in. Yeah.
Here, Crystal.
It's so nice to see you here. I think I first heard you on Krista Tippett, and I was like, ooh, 12-stepper, yay. So I could relate for quite a few years. I So I don't know if this is a question or just a thought, but I was thinking about the narcissism thing that you brought up, the collective narcissism, and the in your own personal conversation you were having about freedom, and I think that like freedom is the goal. It's also like that narcissism, the wellness, the response, like that zhuzhed up view. In my opinion, it plays itself out so differently in our groups, ethnically, racially. You know, that woman who just committed suicide. She was at a college, black woman, the woman who had to step down from Harvard. You know, if there had been more of a focus on, I mean, who knows, right? I don't know. I don't know these people personally. But just as a black woman, I've loved the wellness movement, you know, and gone into it and actually used my 12-step personally since 1996 to do that. Whereas collectively, there's it's a different, plays itself out differently. Thank you for nodding your head to resonate with whatever I'm saying.
I think that's absolutely legitimately true, for sure. I just know in my own circles and you know, at sea level, it's different, you know. But there's no sort of artistic expression or liberating phrase or anything that white women won't steal for themselves and then think it's about us, you know. So yeah.
Others.
Thank you for being here. I love the conversation. I want to ask you, behind you are 4 values, and I'm going back to your high anthropology and the issue of organizations and how do we appeal to a wide range? How do we grow? And do we is that a restriction in terms of welcoming people, in terms of where we are as a church?
Boy, I don't know. Those are beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful sentiments. But every time I look at things that seem really inspirational, I go, oh, wait, sorry, you mean a group of people? Have you met people? So, it's good to have things to work towards. It's good to call ourselves to higher practices and consciousness and all of those things, while still understanding we will disappoint each other. You know, this is why in my church I founded, I left almost 5 years ago, but we would have welcome to House for All Sinners and Saints brunches, and everyone would go around the room and say why they came, what drew them in, or if they've been there for a while, what keeps them there. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. And I would always go last. People would say all this great stuff about, oh, this is what I always thought church should be, and you know, all of this stuff. And then I would go, I love hearing these things, and I love all those things about this church too, but I feel like it's important for you to hear me say, we will disappoint you. No matter how good we are at all those, and it is, it's good, it's beautiful. At some point, we will fail to meet that. We won't live up to it. I'll say something stupid and hurt your feelings. But I just hope you decide now what you're gonna do when that happens, because it will happen. Are you gonna stay? Because if you go, you'll miss the way that grace comes in and fills in those cracks. Okay? So we can't avoid the cracks. We will not. If that's your expectation, please. But we do like to recognize where grace comes in to fill that. So.
Hi, thank you very much. The framework of high versus low anthropology is really helpful. We happen to have like a 40s and 50s ministry now at the church, and one of the common things that we hear are people kind of struggling with that transition. How do you find it helpful to transition between high to more of a low anthropology?
I've never had a high anthropology, so I don't, because there's a reason. I got sober when I was 22. So I've been in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for 32 years. Try having a high anthropology in those rooms. There's no way. There's no way. And yet, look at the human transformation that happens in those rooms. Actual human transformation. Yeah, I think it's just not something I've struggled with. This is why I'm Lutheran, is that Lutheranism is very much low anthropology. We find that God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves is very much part of Lutheran theology. I have it tattooed in Latin on my wrist, simul justus et peccator. Simultaneously, sinner and saint, 100% of both, all the time. So the reason I'm a Lutheran theologian, is because it gave me language for what I already experienced to be true in myself and in the world. And I was like, wow, this is very helpful and accurate, the idea that we're all sinner and saint all the time. So I think I just never had to make the transition. So.
Can you do 10 more minutes?
Yeah, I can do whatever.
Okay, well, but careful with that.
Well,
So we're going to write, and everyone turn a wave at the camera. We're going to wave goodbye to everyone online. Remind people that next week Becky Nicolaitis is going to be here with her new book about the new suburbia, about the development of the Los Angeles suburbs. And then we're going to stick around here. Keith's going to go into the church and get ready for that. We're going to stick around here for 10, 12 more minutes. And then I guess you can hang out here as long as you want, until you got to go sing. Yeah. So, but we've got some more time. Other questions, other thoughts? Oh, back over here.
So, talking about the culture of narcissism in self-care,